Hello, good afternoon, Jenny. It's such a pleasure to have you joining me, not necessarily physically joining me, but via Zoom, because we're both in different parts of Calgary. And it's so nice that we're not looking out at snow today. So I'm glad.
Thank you, Yvonne. I really appreciate you inviting me and including me in this.
Well, I'm excited that you're able to spare a few minutes out of your busy day. For those of you who haven't met Jenny yet, Jenny is a dynamic leader and currently the leader for the BPW group for Canada. And I'll let you talk a little bit more about that role in a moment. I had first connected with Jenny when she was the Calgary Calgary past president, and always look forward to the updates that you share when you're at the United Nations discussions on women's issues, whether you're also sharing highlights from any of your other trips, or the conversations at the national level about how BPW, Business Professional Women, if you're not familiar with BPW, is making a difference, particularly in the advocacy arena. So welcome, Jenny. Feel free, let's hear your own introduction. I always like to hear people introducing themselves. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're up to right now.
Well, I actually practice immigration. I'm a member of the International Bar Association. I also am a registered Canadian immigration consultant. And through my work, of course, I hear a lot of stories, which is what I love the most about practicing immigration. And at the same time, my role right now at the Canadian Federation of Business and Professional Women takes me down a very interesting road as well. It's been quite a journey. And with BPW Canada, as you know, it's got such a strong history and legacy. It's an organization that's been around for 90 years, and it's growing. It's making a difference in the lives of women, and it thinks about improving conditions every step of the way. So nationally, we are about 500 members. We've just had our 87th anniversary. And some of our clubs are 90 years old, like BPW Calgary, for example, or Niagara Falls, which reached its 100th anniversary. So a strong history, a strong legacy, and all about improving conditions for all women.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned BPW, you also mentioned the Federation. I think that sometimes it's a bit confusing how those two things connect.
So locally, BPW Calgary is a member of BPW Canada, which is the Canadian Federation, the national federation. And then the national federations, which are across over 100 countries, are then part of an international federation. And the international federation is, of course, as old as BPW Canada is, because Canada is one of its founding members. But internationally, we're making such a huge difference in so many countries. And the important piece here is having that consultative status at the United Nations, the Economic and Social Council. And this is where we're able to see, the work that's happening locally actually then be included in some of the discussions there. And what's making a difference in the lives of women at the grassroots level, how we can learn from that. It doesn't have to be top down, it can also be the other way around. So it's that exchange from both ends that really is impactful, I think, and very profound.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm also trying to make a difference at both ends. So as you know, I work primarily with entrepreneurial women and women leaders who want to scale up their businesses, expand their business. And one of the things I've noticed, which is what triggered writing the book, is women have often have a lack of confidence, and sometimes it comes through in one or two words when we're having coaching conversations. Sometimes it shows up in their self-talk, and then the impact is shared with me as part of those conversations. So I started putting together the things that I had learned. I've interviewed and hired over 6,000 people in my career, thousands and thousands of coaching questions. So I started putting together the insights from those conversations in the book, which is really around how to have more powerful conversations as women. So what I'm particularly interested in from your perspective as a powerful woman leader, and I think you were also one of the on one of the top 100 most powerful women in Canada lists a couple of years ago.
Yes,
Yeah.
2013.
2013. Is, from your experience, what are maybe one or two words that show up in our language as women that either elevate our confidence or perhaps destroy it? What do you think are the most important words we should be paying attention to?
You know, there are so many words, and so many words come to mind when you think about boosting women's confidence. And I'll explain a little in terms of my own background. I think I have a very unique background in the sense that the two words that I'm going to share with you may seem difficult, or the terminology may not be commonly used, but it actually does come to fruition in some of the actions and also the words that you may have heard from so many other women. I think the two words that I want to share with you, the first one is meritocracy, and the second one is pluralism. And I'll tell you a little bit about what each one means to me, because I think that those two words may not necessarily be in that form or in that terminology with other women, but in the words that they've shared with you, this will also encompass that. So when I think of the word meritocracy, it's the feeling, it's feeling the power in your ability and your talent. So whatever that ability or whatever that competence is in, because merit, it goes beyond your education and it goes beyond your intelligence. It's also about what you do with it.
Yes.
Right? And how you do things with it. So that through that, your other characteristics or qualities are displayed, which kind of also speak of your own character. It speaks of your attitude. It speaks of your principles and your values. And I think that your confidence, it's boosted when you have that content knowledge. So if you know what you're talking about, then immediately and automatically your confidence is boosted. Now, of course, it can't end there. It can't just end at knowledge and the content, because it goes beyond that. But it does make you feel competent.
Yes.
It puts you on an equal footing with those that also have that same talent or have that same knowledge. So that kind of, puts you on an equal footing. And when you have that basic equality, that's when merit is actually developed. And I think I'll go as far as saying merit can be nurtured when there is that basic equality. Now, we're lucky to live in Canada. And, I practice immigration, so it kind of comes back to us as Canadians. And I think as Canadians, we live in a meritocratic society. We don't live in an aristocratic society. It's not about who you know, it's about what you know. And this is also evident in the workplace. It's evident in our hiring practices. It comes down to what you know and how competent you are. And I think that boosts your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first word I would say. I would share the word meritocracy and having the belief that we live in a meritocratic society. And I think being in Canada, we're quite fortunate to see that kind of take place. And so that word is a word that I've actually grown up with since I was 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It may not necessarily be in everyone's, vocabulary on a daily basis, but I bet you anything that in some way, shape, or form, that concept of meritocracy is embedded in all of us. It comes down to what we really know.
Yeah.
What our knowledge base is about.
Well, certainly when I think back to when I was 10, I was growing up in England, and of course they have the class structure, which is very much impacting how much people believe that they can do, how far they can go, and how quickly they can rise, the societal levels. If you're born in lower, middle, or upper class, that's very often where you tend to stay. And certainly coming to Canada, it was refreshing when I came here at 23 to realize that people actually celebrated when you were doing well, and they were glad to see you succeed. And that was quite different than my experience in England. So certainly not a word that was in the book until this point. However, certainly the concept of being rewarded and receiving salary increases on merit is something that I'm very familiar with from my HR leadership era. And it's nice to know that we're both making a difference through the work with BPW on equal pay and pay for, fair pay for merit, and moving that marker as well.
I think, at BPW Canada, we've also taken the time to truly appreciate the achievements of women. When in 2016, when we had the convention in Calgary, we acknowledged 100 women's organizations doing work across Canada and celebrating those achievements, because we have truly, progressed so much. And not to say that there are no challenges that lie ahead, but, we do need to take the time to acknowledge women's competencies and women's achievements, and I think it's really important to celebrate that.
Yeah, and it also connects what you're sharing to research from the Center for Creative Leadership. There are several PhD ladies who identified that competence, caring, and consistency were three of the things in particular that helped women to be seen as successful and authentic leaders. So that competence piece is absolutely a key piece. And I know that you spoke also at the World Economic Forum. I think you spoke on pluralism as well.
I did. I've also been sharing the term pluralism in various forums. So at BPW International, I had a chance to speak there as well in New York City. And, I spoke about pluralism and talked about how it was different from diversity. Because we talk about diversity and we stop there. But we need to go beyond diversity, because diversity is about tolerating our differences. It's about recognizing and then tolerating those differences. But pluralism goes a step beyond. It talks about embracing our differences. And the term pluralism, when you accept and embrace that you're unique, when you accept and embrace that everyone else is unique, that we're all different, then I think you stop comparing. You stop competing. You stop criticizing. You stop focusing on the conflicting views and opinions. It's about accepting and welcoming your own true identity. And at the same time, it's accepting other people as well. It's accepting others as well in their uniqueness and in their differences. I think that it's at that point that you actually then can come together and have a shared sense of pride, because I think that this acceptance of oneself, it actually boosts your confidence. When you accept yourself, no matter how different you are from others, and when you accept that others are different from you, then, like I said, it stops there, and it doesn't go beyond that, in the sense that, okay, how am I different from this person? What can I do to fix myself? And, starting to doubt yourself. But if you're truly accepting and embracing who you are, and doing the same the other way around, then I think it does boost your confidence, because you're acknowledging your uniqueness.
Yes. And it's interesting that I had a conversation recently with Sally Hogshead, the author of the book Fascinate, and also You Are Fascinating, and was talking a little bit about some of her assessments and the thousands of interviews and research statistics that she's looked at when it comes to women, and how important it is to celebrate your uniqueness. And that she has now a methodology for how to actually do that and put some language around it, which enables each person to accurately describe who they are in a way that resonates. And obviously her focus is branding. And as women, I think we still have a core message that we all want to be sharing, whether we're women leaders of our own organization, whether we're in an advocacy or a volunteer role, to be sharing what we can contribute and what makes our message unique. So we're all in sales in some way, shape, or form, aren't we?
That's very true. I think also the words that I've shared with you, like I said, they are being used, and they are being acted on. Maybe we're doing it in different ways. Maybe we're not using the exact word meritocracy or pluralism, but I think that those concepts are very important. I think they're very important. I was very lucky that I was exposed to these two terms at a very young age, and that I was very aware of those two words. And I think that even in our own family, I saw not those two words being used, but the message behind them be used. My dad moved to Canada because of education. We were in Africa, the schools were being nationalized, the English language was not going to be taught anymore. And my dad was, adamant that he had to leave, and he had to put us in schools where, the global language, English was being used. So, in a way, that was, going after this concept of meritocracy, and to make sure that, okay, that education is a focus, that merit was what we were going after, and that eventually through that you could accomplish so much more. Same thing with pluralism. We live in Canada where, like I said, from an immigration point of view, we bring in 1 million people every 4 years into our country. We've done that since the beginning of my practice. It's been over 20 years we've been doing that. So, the face of Canada, the makeup of Canada, the composition of Canada is changing. And so we've got to recognize that we're a pluralistic society, and that by recognizing our differences, by embracing our own uniqueness, it really allows us to uplift ourselves, but it also uplifts others in the process. And I think our life is enriched. When you're enriched, you then have the capacity to inspire not only yourself, but also others in the process.
Absolutely. So if there was one word that you would encourage women to put more awareness on that perhaps should be eliminated from their vocabulary, what would you suggest that we stop saying that diminishes our power?
I think sometimes, I mean, we are human beings, and in our uniqueness, we do tend to get busy with life and at work or raising our family. I think sometimes it becomes a lot about I.
Yes.
And a lot of times, whether it's in a work setting, when we succeed, we tend to forget that we also succeed because we have others around us. And sometimes when we're going up the ladder, we should be able to pull others along with us. And I think that a lot of times we forget to use the word we as opposed to the word I. Because, when life happens and you've been working so hard to get to where you need to get to, it becomes more about the I. And so I think we need to remember to use the word we along the way. And every time you get to that next step on the ladder, make sure that you're pulling someone else along with you.
I love that, and you so clearly demonstrate that in your role in BPW, and certainly when I'm working with women leaders, it's part of the conversation to inquire, when you're looking over your shoulder, is there anybody actually with you, anybody behind you? Because otherwise you're not leading anything.
Yes.
And certainly I was at a CWA meeting this week, and some of the immigrant women that were looking for work, we were talking about what to include and not include in cover letters that go with their resumes. And I said, if I was in a hiring role looking to add someone who needed to be a team player for a project that typically is participating with many other people, and I see in the cover letter, I this, I that, I this, I that, it's an instant no, because they're not demonstrating that they're a team player with all those I's. So thanks for putting the spotlight on that. I know that we just have a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of your time as well. So is there anything that you'd like to share in particular with the audience? I'm all about taking action from what I learn. If there's an opportunity to draw attention to something in particular that is important for you, is there anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. I would like to mention maybe a word, collaboration. If we're not working together, then we're not getting anywhere. When we work in isolation, and I talk about this even at BPW Canada, it's so important to have partnerships, and it's so important to all be on the same page, even with things like equal pay, right? And I think that the three pieces that need to be coming together on any issue are, the leaders from government, the leaders from businesses, and the leaders from civil society. Because if we're working on an issue, and if we're working in silo, if we're not coordinated, and if we're not able to understand each other, then we can't move forward on any issue. So without these three key stakeholders coming together, nothing can really happen in terms of progress that we want to achieve. In the BPW Canada context, it's for women. But, as an immigration practitioner and presenting on citizenship, I talk about this all the time in the sense that we can only shape our nation when we're working on issues together. And so when it comes to progress in a society, in any society, I think that leaders need to come together, and that the peace that civil societies on their own, they can't do it on their own. They may be able to raise the issues, they may be at the grassroots, but they can't move forward on things by themselves. So leaders from businesses and leaders from government need to come together with those from civil society to make progress in our neighborhoods, in our communities, in our societies, and truly the world.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, the focus of this book is really about having more confident conversations. And obviously, if it's not a two-way dialogue, it's not a conversation. It's self-talk, which is another interview that I did. There's a focus on that. There's been some really interesting nuggets of information that you've shared, Jenny. And with your permission, I would certainly like to be utilizing this recording to share with some of the other women who I don't think have quite the same perspective yet as some of the wisdom that you've shared. So I want to thank you for your time today, and your work that you're doing in your BPW Canada role. I look forward to continuing to support you in that. And I know that we're just heading into December, and it's going to be a little bit crazy for most calendars. So I wanted to thank you again for your time taking a few minutes today.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. You are doing amazing work even with BPW Calgary, and the mentorship program, and being at the helm, really, whether it's locally and even nationally, you're doing that. So thank you for the work that you do, and for including me in this very important conversation.
Thank you, Jenny. It's appreciated.